From August 3rd to the 5th, what should have been just another annual joint exercise between China and Russia unexpectedly became much more than that. The usual lineup of destroyers, frigates, and submarines formed the standard task force, nothing new. For the Chinese and Russian navies, it was simply another day on the exercise calendar. But this year, something was different. A new and unfamiliar vessel appeared, the Xihu. This ship is not a destroyer or a land ship, but rather a specialized submarine rescue vessel. Its mission was not to engage in combat, but to dive, carrying a rescue capsule, ventilation system, and oxygen tubes to bring trapped submarine crew members back to the surface. Typically, this type of ship would not even make it onto the exercise roster. Its sudden appearance sent ripples through military circles. What brought it here? Who was it rescuing? Just days earlier, an 8.8 magnitude earthquake triggered a tsunami that slammed into Avacha Bay in the Kamchatka region of Russia's far east. This bay is home to Russia's Pacific Fleet's strategic Rybachi nuclear submarine base. Initial satellite images and scattered leaked intelligence began to paint a grim picture of Kamchatka's devastation. Avacha Bay is a core harbor of Russia's Pacific Fleet and suffered severe damage. The concrete breakwater of the nuclear submarine base was snapped like a cookie by the tsunami. A 10,000-ton dock was torn into pieces and sank into the swirling waters. Ships in the harbor were tossed by the violent waves. Among them, a Borei-class submarine and two Delta IV-class strategic nuclear submarines were caught off guard and unable to dive in time. They collided violently with docks, debris, and steel frames before being swept away by murky currents. Things worsened when encrypted communications between the base and Moscow were completely severed. This wasn't just about the safety of three massive steel beasts, it was the heart of Russia's maritime nuclear deterrence. If the reactors or warheads aboard those submarines were damaged, the consequences could be catastrophic. It is equivalent to combining the horror of Chernobyl with the scale of the Fukushima incident, triggering widespread contamination, crippling the fleet, and sparking global panic. Kamchatka, once a remote coastal region, instantly became the epicenter of a global storm. The Russians were desperate, and the outside world's curiosity was intense. Nuclear safety agencies, military intelligence networks, and even maritime monitoring satellites were all focused on the turbulent waters of the region. At this critical moment, China dispatched a submarine rescue vessel to the exercise area. The timing of the ship's appearance, so close to the nuclear submarine crisis, led many to draw their own conclusions. As the news broke, military forums, intelligence blogs, and social media exploded. Many speculations surfaced, such as, Xihu isn't here for the exercise, is it? Could it be en route to Kamchatka to salvage the nuclear submarine? Global military enthusiasts and maritime trackers immediately began checking AIS tracks, calculating distances, and waiting for the ship's signals to appear off the coast of Kamchatka. The result is disappointment. The Xihu vessel stayed put in the waters between the Sea of Japan and the Sea of Okhotsk. The rescue ship didn't go carry out a rescue mission, so why was it there? As everyone continued to question its presence, a leaked document from the hacker group Black Moon exposed the true nature of the exercise. This wasn't an ordinary Sino-Russian joint exercise. It was a secret test that had already been scripted long ago, codename Sword 208. Sword 208 was designed for a future Taiwan Strait conflict. It was a fully automated airborne assault system, custom made by Russian engineers for China. The document revealed that Sword 208 includes the following: fleet route planning, designing optimal sailing paths for amphibious task forces; airdrop and amphibious coordination, synchronizing the rhythm of joint air-ground landings; AI combat relay, connecting the front lines with a command center for real-time instructions; underwater communication links; maintaining deep-sea contact with submarines and unmanned underwater vehicles; multimodal fire support coordination, integrating data for naval guns, missiles, helicopters, and drones. The Xihu vessel played a key role in this test under the guise of a submarine rescue ship. On the surface, Xihu seemed just like a ship with a large crane on its deck and life-saving chambers and decompression tanks hidden within. However, in the Sword 208 plan, its role was far more complex. The document outlines three main uses for Xihu during the test. 1. Helicopter platform. Its large flight deck was capable of simultaneously launching and landing multiple Z-20 helicopters, simulating the rapid pace of airborne drops during a potential Taiwan Strait operation. 2. Deep sea communication relay. Using the ship's original submarine communication equipment, Xihu facilitated the construction of encrypted links for real-time transmission of commands and data between the SWOR 208 system and underwater combat units. 3. Non-amphibious ship identity. This was the most covert aspect. In US military satellites in signal intelligence databases, submarine rescue vessels are classified as low-priority targets and are not typically included in the first wave of decapitation strikes. Replacing amphibious assault ships with Xihu allowed for forward deployment while remaining invisible on radar. Beijing was well aware that deploying the amphibious assault ships directly into the Sea of Japan for landing exercises would immediately trigger a shift in the US military's high priority target list, prompting all reconnaissance resources to focus on the area. The SOAR 208 system would never have been able to undergo a safe test in such circumstances. So, Xihu was chosen as a perfect decoy. Even more strategically timed, their exercise took place just days after the Kamchatka nuclear submarine base was severely damaged by a tsunami. Everyone believed that China was rescuing submarines during the military exercises in support of Russia. However, the true plan was to carry out a core system test related to the Taiwan Strait conflict in the seemingly safe waters of the Sea of Japan, while global attention shifted towards north. From August 3rd, Sino-Russian naval forces, comprising more than 10 major ships, began the Maritime Interaction 2025 exercise in the waters near Kuril Islands. The surface-level activities were routine. China's 052 destroyer Urumqi sailed alongside Russia's Admiral Tribut's anti-submarine destroyer, forming a joint command group. Anti-submarine aircraft from both countries, the Chinese Y-8 and Russian Il-38, flew in tandem, simulating depth-charge drops and conducting anti-submarine net searches with helicopters. These are activities that would convince any observer that this was a typical anti-submarine exercise. Meanwhile, Xihu sailed alongside Russia's Igor Belousov rescue vessel, publicly conducting a mission to rescue a simulated downed Russian submarine. The ship's crane moved, divers went underwater, and ventilation tubes were connected. Everything appeared as it should. However, inside Xihu's operations center, Chinese technicians gathered around specialized screens, quickly toggling between keyboards and touchpads. They weren't executing rescue protocols, but rather conducting the first live data link test for the SOAR 208 system at sea. A highly encrypted data stream was transmitted via satellite, linking Xihu with allied units hundreds of kilometers away. Beneath the surface, China's submarine quietly deviated from its pursuit path, receiving a turn and servicing command via SOAR 208. A few minutes later, it accurately completed the maneuver and sent back data on speed, depth, and position. The smooth data link meant SOAR 208 could command underwater units with precision in real combat scenarios. On the surface, several Z-20 helicopters took off from Xihu's large deck but did not participate in anti-submarine operations. One helicopter left the main fleet and performed tactical maneuvers in a preset airspace, ultra-low altitude penetration, hover airdrops, and rapid ascents. Every second of its flight trajectory, speed, and altitude change was transmitted in real time to SOAR 208, verifying the AI's capability to plan vertical penetration routes and evade enemy radar. At that moment, this unassuming submarine rescue vessel was effectively functioning as an amphibious assault ship. The loud gunfire covered the silent data transmission. The public rescue efforts concealed secret offensive plans. Beijing's calculation was initially accurate. Kamchatka's nuclear submarine crisis was enough to draw the Pentagon's attention northward, redirecting much of its high-value reconnaissance resources to the perilous waters of that region. In the state of distraction, the routine exercise in the Sea of Japan would seem much safer. However, the US military's response was more measured and assertive than anticipated. While some reconnaissance forces were indeed diverted to Kamchatka, the core carrier battle groups remained vigilant, maintaining constant surveillance of the Sino-Russian fleet. Instead of retreating, they opted for a more aggressive strategy. The distance between the fleets continued to decrease, and when the two sides were at their closest, the separation was less than 80 kilometers. In international waters, this distance meant one undeniable fact: a single trigger pull could instantly escalate into combat. China did not back down. The North Sea Fleet's anti submarine forces were mobilized, with Y-8 anti submarine planes, Z-20 helicopters, and submarines forming a tight net. Soon, two U.S. Virginia class nuclear attack submarines, accompanying the U.S. carrier battle group, were locked onto. Beijing made a risky move. It initiated active sonar pinging and dropped training depth charges to force the U.S. submarines to surface. This provocative tactic was rare in international waters, designed both to humiliate the opponent and signal, "I have locked onto your position." The US response was stronger. The aircraft carrier battle group, stationed 80 kilometers away, did not retreat but pressed forward. The escorting Arleigh Burke-class destroyer sounded battle alarms, and aircraft aboard the carrier were prepped for launch. At this critical moment, pressure shifted to China's command seat. Without authorization from the highest levels, the North Sea Fleet commander hesitated to fire the first shot. Meanwhile, faced with clear military posturing from the US, the CCP government hesitated as well. They weren't prepared for a full-scale war with the US. This moment of hesitation became the turning point. The two US submarines seized the opportunity, using the complex underwater environment to escape tracking, disappearing silently into the deep sea. Beijing's takeaway was not a victory, but a hard-learned lesson in humility. Hard power isn't just about equipment. In a conventional naval confrontation, Beijing's leadership realized that tactical showmanship alone would neither intimidate the resolute US military nor sway Russia, which was watching from the sidelines. As the exercise neared its end, a much more significant strategic card was placed on the table. A 055 destroyer in the task force slowly entered a predetermined area, and its vertical launch system opened. The DN-3 sea-based missile defense system executed an interception test during its ascent phase. The missile, leaving behind a bright trail, tore through the air, heading straight for the sky. Officially, it was a missile defense drill. However, military intelligence agencies worldwide understood it was a demonstration of anti-satellite weapons. This strike has two edges: a strategic threat. The message is clear. While the US may gain an advantage in naval tactical engagement, China can destroy its GPS, communication, and reconnaissance satellites, rendering its multi-billion-dollar aircraft carrier fleet into floating blind steel. This is a classic example of asymmetric deterrence, directly targeting the US military's foundation. For Moscow, it's a carefully choreographed trust-building maneuver. It's a show for Russia to witness China's full hand. China not only possesses a massive fleet, but also advanced technology capable of challenging the US. China is offering Russia strategic depth and technological support, positioning itself as an indispensable ally. Beijing's decision to expose its trump card in front of the US military wasn't a rash move. It was a strategic display of power to stabilize its position, deter the strongest adversary, and secure the hesitant ally. However, to truly understand this performance, one must grasp Beijing's deepest fear: total blockade. Don't laugh, the key to this fear is pork. China consumes nearly half the world's pork every year, and pork production relies heavily on soybean meal. The source, soybeans, has long been controlled by countries such as the US and Brazil, countries that China cannot fully control. If relations between China and the US deteriorate completely, a single embargo could cut off feed imports. The consequences are easy to imagine: pork shortages, skyrocketing meal prices, runaway inflation, and social unrest. The food security of 1.4 billion people is a sword hanging over any Chinese leader's head. As this sword hung precariously in 2025, a new overland pork supply line was taking shape. According to data from Russia's FESCO Transportation Group, more than 35,000 tons of Russian pork were transported to China via the Siberian Railway in the first half of the year, 35% more than the total for 2024. Although the quantity is small, it signals that Beijing is creating a land-based lifeline for its core food supply, one that is unaffected by maritime hegemony and is entirely controlled by friendly nations. The same applies to oil and natural gas. With Russia's land pipelines, China has a backup plan to maintain industrial operations and prevent societal collapse in extreme situations. China's decisive action during the exercise, whether the submarine pursuit or the demonstration of the DN-3 missile defense system, were strategic signals to Moscow, emphasizing the interconnectedness of their fates. The messages conveyed include food security and vast land are linked, factories and oil fields are interdependent, supporting each other ensures mutual survival, cooperation is essential. In the Maritime Interaction 2025 exercise, the most unpredictable actor was ironically Russia, the nominal partner. Its destroyers sailed side by side with China's, and its fighter jets flew in tandem with China's, yet its true intentions were hidden. Inside the Kremlin's red walls, two seemingly opposing forces were clashing. To the east are real immediate gains. As Western sanctions tighten around Russia, China became its only economic lifeline, absorbing vast amounts of its oil, natural gas, and agricultural products. More importantly, both countries shared a common and powerful enemy. Standing back to back against the US led global order was the only viable strategic path for Russia. The advanced military capabilities displayed by China during the exercise demonstrated to Russia the immense value of this partnership. However, the fear is also from the East. Russia has centuries of great power legacy and deeply ingrained national pride. Its deepest nightmare is to become China's resource vassal and strategic junior partner. Facing an economy 10 times smaller than China's, Russia knows that, over time, its bargaining power will be gradually eroded, ultimately locked in by the massive gravitational pull of its neighbor. If sanctions were lifted, Russia could re enter the global financial system, gain access to advanced technology, and rejuvenate its wary economy. Moreover, if China grows too powerful in the future, aligning with the US to counter China remains a powerful tool for balancing the Eastern giant. Yet this pill of reconciliation is tough for Russia to swallow. From Moscow's perspective, NATO's multiple rounds of eastward expansion are a gun pointed at Russia's head. The West has never abandoned its desire to dismember Russia. Any reconciliation with the West would entail humiliating concessions on core interests such as Ukraine, something no hardline Russian leader would ever accept. To them, such concessions would equate to selling out and surrendering. Understanding this dilemma, Russia's choice becomes clear. It acts like a savvy tightrope walker, using its strategic cooperation with China as its strongest bargaining chip in its game with the West. At the same time, it views the possibility of easing tensions with the West as its last escape route to prevent being completely tied to China. So in the 2025 exercise, Russia actively participated, openly collaborating and praising China's advanced weapons, using this to pressure the West. Meanwhile, it also quietly assessed its allies' true strength and bottom line, all while discreetly keeping open communication channels with the West. Russia is not choosing sides, instead, it is leveraging every possible angle, paving a lonely and perilous path, one that leads to the dream of returning to the pinnacle of the world stage.